This is a Hope 1032 podcast.
He would need our physical touch to help him get into what he needed to get into. But when that happened, I would just grab his arm and I would say, "Don't go," and that triggered him. But it also triggered me.
Hello, welcome to Undistracted. I'm your host, Laura Bennett, and this is the podcast where we learn from our guests how to get better at building our lives with intention around our passions, our purpose, and deal with some of the things that can get in the way of that. Our guest today is Australian actor George Xanthis, who plays John on The Chosen, the global hit series about the life of Jesus and his disciples. The next season is one of the biggest as they face the crucifixion of Christ, and in this episode, George not only talks about that, but about how a local Sydney boy got this gig, pressure to be a religious icon, and how his spirituality has evolved during filming. Let's welcome George to the show. You're back in Australia. It's wonderful to have you here in person. Welcome home.
Thank you. It is home. Thanks for having me. I know you've visited my work home a few times, so I thought this would be really nice to come and visit your guys' home.
Yeah, welcome to my workplace.
Yeah, this is your,
Not nearly as interesting as yours, I will say.
Yeah, and ours keeps kind of changing, which is weird. Like, we don't really notice it. But yeah, we've seen the show grow from, I was even talking to you about, we used to do our live streams with Dallas in hotel rooms, and now there is like a special little live stream room, and there's actually several of them around the set. The set has grown so much. But, despite all of that, it's so impressive, and it's my home away from home, but I always call Australia home, and it's lovely to be back.
When you spend so much of your life, in Jewish culture for the show,
Yes.
American culture for life, for work, how does it feel coming back into Australian culture?
It's cool. It's funny. There's a little bit of traffic in Sydney, but you can get to the beach kind of easily, and we take it for granted in Sydney. It's just, I can't say the greatest country in the world. I don't know any different, although I've lived so many places in the world. But it has to be one of the best. And you look at all the metrics in terms of like happiness and stuff like that on a broad scale. Australia is just a really, really cool place. So yeah, there are a lot of different cultures I interact with. Yeah, it's just something really relaxing about Australia, and we get that reputation overseas. I've never understood it, but maybe the way that I've just articulated it then, there is a laid-back vibe in Australia. It doesn't mean that we're like, hey, how's it going? Like all the time, and just like really
we can be switched on when we need to be.
We can be switched on, but when I'm here, I feel relaxed. There's space between things. There's parks, and there's cliff sides, and there's inland, and there's up the coast. It's beautiful.
It's diverse. And you grew up here, of course. What were the dreams of, 8-year-old George when you were growing up in Sydney? What were the sort of things that you wanted to become, imagined becoming, quote unquote, when you grew up?
I remember I knew that performance was a thing that I enjoyed. I don't know if the word is infamously so, just never made any school plays. Like I was in a lot I went to a Greek school, so St. Spiridon College, which is centered around St. Spiridon Church in Kingsford. And you learn Greek, which is great. So if you are Greek background or any other background, if you want to learn Greek, that's a really cool, quick way to do it. I was in a lot of the school plays at St. Spiridon, but then I moved schools and I was not in one school play. I knew I wanted to do something performance related. So this is weird. This is kind of how my career has gone, in the fact that maybe the opportunities are not directly available in front of me. So almost like a busker on the side of the street,
right.
I will just do whatever I can do. And maybe someone will find it entertaining to a degree, and mostly that comes with comedy. And so that's what I was doing. I was at school, and nobody would put me in school plays, so I would do like impressions of teachers.
Oh wow! Did that get you into detention sometimes?
The complete opposite. People thought I was in detention. I got this really funny moment when I was in maybe year 12 or so, or year 11, and there was a knock on the door. And I'm gonna out the teachers, Mr. Scarley, who said, "Can I please see Mr. Xanthis for a second?" And then I was in Mr. Reed's history class. Mr. Reed's like, "What have you done now, Xanthis?" And I'm just like, "I don't know." And so I go out, and Mr. Scarley's like, "Come with me." we go next door to the next door classroom, and then all the kids are just staring at the door at me. And then Mr. Scully says, do an impression of Mr. Reed from next door. And I'm just like, oh, okay, I'm not in trouble. And so I did an impression of Mr. Reed, and he goes, now do Mr. Phillips. And I would like run through all my roulette of teacher impressions.
This is how they kept their day interesting. They're like, let's get you to be the entertainer at lunchtime.
Well, it was also this, again, that laid back thing. I don't know, like we really got treated awesome in like 11th and 12th grade at school, because the teachers just kind of treat us like adults a little bit. So yes, we were learning and studying, but there was more this thing of like, let's have a chat. Let's just keep it a bit more relaxed because there's so much stress. We called it the HSC. I don't know what it's called now, ATAR, whatever it's called. But yeah, that's how I was scratching the itch for performance. But I always wanted to be something, they ask you like, well, if you want to do something for the rest of your life and get paid for it, what would you want to do? I'm like, well, ideally make people laugh and perform and do something in that area. And then it's actually Australian listeners and viewers might know this. My uncle went to school with quite a famous Australian actor, and I'm from this small suburb. It's a bit bigger these days, called Earlwood, which is southwest Sydney. And my uncle told me, as I was doing these funny impressions and voices and stuff, throughout my teenage years, he goes, I went to school with Alex Dimitriadis,
Oh, right.
And if you keep on, that's what you can become. He's a local boy, Greek boy from Earlwood.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Alex Dimitriadis from school? And it was like my dream. I'm like, I want to work with Alex Dimitriadis. And
well, see, now your name will be the name that other people say, I went to school with this guy, and don't you realize what you can become,
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I would be always willing to help those people out. But then at, my first ever acting job was alongside Alex Dimitriadis.
Wow.
That was my entry into the industry. It took me 7 years as a budding actor. And that's what I was talking about with, everyone wants to be on TV. And you just get these cold, hard no kind of responses. So I'm like, okay, I started making YouTube videos. I started doing impressions, sketches, making my own content. And so it was the same thing kind of as a kid. I didn't exactly have the avenue to do what I wanted, but I knew what I wanted. And it started pretty early.
Yeah, you find that pathway. And, the school you were raised in obviously had Greek Orthodox kind of flavour to it. You were raised Greek Orthodox as well. How was religion, how was spirituality represented to you at home?
For Greeks, it's just as important. Look, I don't want to be speaking out of turn. There's a lot of pressure sometimes with, especially someone like me on a show like The Chosen. I'm very proudly Greek Orthodox, and I want to represent the community the best way that I can. But, I hope I don't speak out of turn when I say that it's as much a cultural and family thing for me. And that is so important because Greeks have a long history, and this has been part of their cultural identity. And that's as important, maybe for some it's not as important, for some it's even more important, but it's just a thing that I recognize. And so, just as important as it is having a spiritual connection, in my opinion, I think that going to Greek Easter every year to see family and breaking bread with your family around the table at Easter, and for Greeks to be doing that, especially in the context of history, there was 400 odd years of Ottoman occupation. And when you look at something like, Greek Orthodoxy, which is, again, using my history knowledge, hopefully, I think it's like 300 AD is kind of when Constantine adopts Christianity for the Roman Empire, and then you've got Byzantium, and then you've got Rome. So we're just talking about over 1,000 years here, like a long time. And it's important because Greeks have been able to maintain their identity and maintain family and togetherness through that. So I knew that as a kid growing up and doing this, like going to Greek Easter and whatnot, but I didn't realize how important it was to the survival of Greeks, because we're a very old, ancient people, and it's a strange way to look at it. Again, I hope I'm saying the right things there, but when I say the cultural, aspect of it, it means I see my family, very often throughout the year. Now that I'm overseas, I try and attend at least Greek Easter, and I'll get into that, how that is on the show with cast members, which is really cool and fun. but I don't get to do it as often. And for me, the thing that I miss as a good Greek Christian boy, I should say I miss church, but I miss my family. I miss seeing my aunties, uncles, extended cousins, community. Without that, Greeks wouldn't be here now.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have survived. So I think it's important to recognize Greek Orthodoxy and our traditions in that process. I don't think we would have survived had it been for that.
And even in the way that, you play the role of John in The Chosen, when you take on a role like that, did you feel like there was any expectation to become more versed in Christian culture, in Christian heritage, to understand that purely because you're taking on such a significant kind of character in the life of the Christian faith?
I'm actually going to have a very similar walk and talk with Father Gerasimos from Rose Bay Greek Orthodox Church, St. George Church. But I actually went on a stroll with him one day. We were walking along I may have told this story before, but we're walking along the cliff sides of Maroubra and or Coogee. It was such a long walk. And it was quite special because as we were talking about John, Father Gerasimos was saying, I can imagine John, the disciple, in his old age, being on a cliff face like this in Patmos and having these similar conversations, whether it was with himself or with, Prochoros, which was his scribe at the time. So it was a very surreal moment for him, and that was really touching for Father Gerasimos to say that to me. So the reason I bring that up is that I have never felt that pressure. If anything, I've just been given especially from priests that I've grown up with, like Father Gerasimos, I've been given the permission to explore and understand this in the way that comes naturally to me. Spirituality is a much bigger journey for me. I would say that I had no idea that my far-reaching spirituality that I've had, which is a little bit more broad, after being on the show, I had no idea how much more connected that was to Jesus, the person. As a kid, as a 6-year-old, whether it was, I went to another school that it was Anglican, I think, going to chapel at my second school or even going to church at my Greek Orthodox school. I didn't understand that aspect of it. Being on the show, because I listen to Jesus's teachings and I walk his teachings and I follow it, and as a character, I'm digesting it and trying to understand it. And our show loves doing 600 takes per scene.
I have heard this. There's lots of different angles, lots of different
angles, lots of takes. It just means that I'm like, I had no idea that was a way to look at this. I had no idea that Jesus was doing that. And I would implore people who are very either spiritual, religious, or both to digest The Chosen in that way. It's such a different way to see it when you are imagining yourself in their sandals, as I always say, 2,000 years ago. And I think that's been a way that I've connected the two. I maybe felt before that it was more of a cultural connection to Greek Orthodoxy, and I have my own spiritual journey that I'm on. But because I've been on the show, I had no idea how much more expansive Jesus's teachings were. And then coming back to what you said, do I feel a pressure? Well, people like Father Gerasimos and my experience have given me the permission not to feel that pressure. Gives me, hopefully, the ability to speak candidly like this and not feel the pressure to be a mouthpiece for Greek Orthodoxy or Christianity. I don't want to be that. I always say to people, if they want to ask me my opinion, there are just things from an historical perspective that I'm learning about John and what he would have been like back, 2,000 years ago following his rabbi. But if they ever need spiritual guidance on that stuff, definitely seek your spiritual leaders and refer to the Bible, because you're going to get much better answers than me. I'm not going to be able to give those answers. I can only muse.
Yeah, well, it's better to just be yourself and talk honestly about the journey you're going on. I think it's a really human lens that you can bring not just to the character, but also how you're experiencing this wild, crazy journey, and you touch on that distinction between religion and spirituality. What is the difference between the two for you?
Well, I asked that same question to Father Gerasimos. I felt like religiously I was not a good Christian because I don't go to church every week. I don't read the Bible. I don't profess those same things that I just hear maybe religious people professing. And I didn't feel a permission that I was allowed to say I was religious. And Father Gerasimos, I'm giving him a lot of credit here. I hope I don't get him in trouble. But I said to him what my beliefs were, and he says, George, it sounds to me that you're very spiritual. And he says, it's very hard to be spiritual. He says, obviously, the sweet spot would love to be spiritual and religious. He goes, that's the sweet spot. He goes, but not everybody is on that journey. I actually went to, I recently baptized my son in the Orthodox Church, which was a really fun thing to do, in terms of coming back to Australia and kind of, being back where our roots are and seeing family and whatnot. But then we had to do a communion session for Leo, it's my son, a week or two after the christening. And, I did see people kind of rushing in to church after all of the sermons were done, which is completely their prerogative. If they found it not interesting, then okay, I'm sorry, whatever. I was there for the majority of it, but they came in and then went to the front, got communion, and then left. And it's like, maybe that is some people see that as I've done my religious duty. I don't want to say that, but that would be like maybe culturally practicing it or keeping it in the family, perhaps.
Yeah, they've ticked a box in some way.
Possibly. I don't want to make that accusation. But for me, I wouldn't even sometimes do that. I don't go for communion every weekend. I probably should. But this was a really lovely moment, especially being there in St. Spiridon in my current context of playing one of the disciples on the show. I knew every single icon and what it meant. I actually, as I was saying before, I was with His All Holiness Patriarch of Constantinople. I actually was, I don't want to say misspeak here, I was the warm-up act at the St. Nicholas Greek Orthodox Church in New York City. It was actually the one right next to the World Trade Centers that was destroyed with the wreckage. So it's actually part of that disaster. So it got rebuilt, and it's this small little, very, very humble church. And I just did a little talk there to some young Greek Americans. But I prefaced it by saying I'm not the right person to talk to about this stuff. But I started looking around. I'm like, does anyone know what that event is? And, people were kind of, it did say on there, like in Greek, what it was referring to. And it was the water to wine miracle. And I was like, oh, that's interesting because I know at that event that because, it's the wedding at Cana, our show takes the creative license. Again, I'm not sure if it's directly in the Bible, but Jesus maybe would have been festive in that moment. And it's interesting in our show that to imagine what Jesus and the disciples would have been like in that moment. And then I go on explaining what it would have been like at a wedding back then. And all that is in the context of water to wine. I barely mentioned the miracle. And so it's like, maybe if you read the Bible, you get the miracle part, but then our show fills in those areas in between. And those of us on the show as the actors get to live those, and we hope that audiences get to live those moments by watching. So that's the only kind of expertise I can offer. And I was pleasantly surprised, at least by looking at their eyes glued on me and, the questions that they were asking, that they were quite intrigued by what I had to say. But I would never profess to say that it is important.
Yeah. So take us into The Chosen for a second. You were cast as John, of course. This is now, almost 7 years ago or so?
I think
season
it's
1? 8 years ago, okay,
yeah.
When season 1 kicks off filming. What do you remember about your first day on set?
It's so weird, I'd done jobs in Australia, and it's Australia. I was by no means a big fish in a small pond, but I was a fish in a small pond. And so you kind of, it's almost like an analogy of playing football in maybe a lower division, but like scoring lots of goals and, getting used to it. And then you get to a bigger team. And even like I was playing football with like men from a younger age. And so moving over to like different divisions, I'm like, oh, you just have to, show a little bit more grit and whatnot. Yeah. When I get to America, I'm kind of quite experienced, and maybe compared to American actors, who are probably doing more indie work and low budget work, there was a degree of experience when I came to America. But then the scale of the indie work in America compared to the indie work in Australia is like chalk and cheese. But then I'm doing like TV shows in Australia, and so I'm coming to America, and The Chosen was just like, it was so interesting coming on. It was like you arrive and it's just like, oh, hi, George, this way. And it's like, where am I? What's going on? And, you know, it was like my first American job. So I didn't know what to expect. Would it be like Australia? You know, I'm trying to look for the second AD, and obviously it was an independent project at the time.
And it's in the middle of kind of a desert sort of location, right? Like sort of back of Dallas.
Yeah.
Nothing really around it.
And my first things that I film are, if I'm not mistaken, The Miracle of the Fish, I think. But either way, I mean, my first experience of the show is me with Nick Shakur, who plays Zebedee, and then Cheyenne was the original Big James. So the three of us would, you know, hang out in one dressing room, and the dressing rooms were a third of a room. So we're all three of us crammed into one. By choice, by the way. They did give us three separate thirds.
No, but you wanted to be buddies.
Wanted to be buddies. So, yeah, it was so humble. And this is the thing, is that my first day on the show felt so relaxed and so familiar and so like startup to a degree. But that feeling still exists on set today, which is, I think, one of the successes of the show is that despite the massive scale in what the show has become and the increased scale of production, both budget and distribution, is that it still feels like it did kind of day one in a good way. So first day was really fun and exciting. I didn't know what to expect, but it was really cool, like getting into the water and doing action scenes. And, you know, there's a little Easter egg in that scene of the Miracle of the Fish, which we might come to in season 7, where John is seen sprinting past Zebedee and James. So Dallas said to me on that day, he goes, "This is a little nod to what I hope would be season 7." And I go,
that he was already thinking about that is wild.
And I go, well, what is that? He goes, well, John beats Peter to the tomb. Or so he says in his gospel, quite interestingly. So he goes, I wanted to have John outpacing them in this one. He goes, can you run fast? I'm like, can I?
The soccer fan in you comes out. No, here we go. I'm ready.
Yes.
Do you remember when you first met Jonathan? He plays Jesus, of course. A lot of people will know that.
Yeah.
An incredible representation of Jesus. When you first met him, what was that like? Did you feel this sense of, okay, this guy is going to know what it takes to be Jesus?
He was hidden on the call sheet. So there was I kind of didn't even know it was a show about the Bible. I really was not aware of, again, John, I didn't know was a disciple. I was sure that I was playing the Baptist, you know, and then they said, you're one of the gospel writers. And then they said John 3:16. I'm like, do you mean Stone Cold Steve Austin? Austin 3:16? Are you kidding? Is that who I'm playing? You know, I was so excited. And I don't know if I talked about it with Dallas. He's like, yeah, but the original, John is the right. This. Yeah, the source of that. But Jonathan was hidden. So even on the call sheet, even if I was everything did click for me on the call sheet, I just didn't see he had a moniker in there because I don't know. Maybe we were trying to, because he's right at the end of the first episode, if I'm not mistaken. So I just had very little interaction with him. John is only scarcely represented in the first 4 episodes, shown. So I'm not in any scenes with him until, the Miracle of the it actually happens in the fish. He shows up then, but again, we shot all of our scenes. Even when we're looking towards them, they just didn't bring them on set yet. So we're looking towards no one.
Wow.
And then when we do kind of reverses, they bring in everybody, which would have been Thaddeus, Little James, Mary Magdalene. There we had some few background, and then we had Jonathan. So I just didn't even get the time to say hello. So actually, I did not properly meet Jonathan on set. So I didn't get a chance to get an impression of Jonathan, which is all the more intriguing because when that first, call it 2-3 months of filming, I don't know what it was. I was only there for a couple of weeks. But once we finished that first lot of filming, I got in touch with Jonathan and we realized we lived a few streets away from each other in LA. And so, we started chatting and he just knew from the first few sentences that I enjoyed doing voices, and then he would kind of spar with me and do impressions back at me, and I'm like, geez, you're pretty good. He's like, well, I used to do some voice work. I'm like, what did you used to do? And he goes, you ever heard of Celebrity Deathmatch? And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, I did a few of the celebrity voices on that. My brother and I used to tape that show. We loved Celebrity Deathmatch. For those who don't know, it's like claymation of celebrities fighting in a little ring.
It's
in a
highbrow,
wrestling ring.
highbrow entertainment.
Yeah. And so we had so many things in common. We would help each other out with tapes. We lived so close to each other. We got movie subscriptions to the AMC theater where we watch 3 movies a week. So we're like, we to get our money's worth, we need to watch 3 movies quickly.
Total
so we're like,
movie nerds.
yeah, movie nerds. We're like, what are we going to do? We would, get dinner a lot of the time. So we just became really, really close. And I wasn't really aware of John and Jesus's relationship at that stage. And it took a conversation with another Greek Orthodox priest who just baptized my son, Father Stephen from St. Spiridon, for him to tell me, Jesus and John, like he was considered the beloved disciple and they were very close. He was part of Jesus's inner circle. And I just thought, this is so serendipitous and amazing. And I'm sure Jonathan knew about that relationship, but that was not on our mind.
Yeah.
Then when season 2 comes around and episode 1 comes around, which is Thunder, where we do establish the relationship between Jonathan and Jesus. I mean, thank goodness we'd had that whole year of friendship, because you can probably see there are some bloopers from those days. And I think if I had seen Jonathan as just another actor and we were doing bloopers, I probably would have been like a little bit, I don't know, like, does this guy joke around? Should I hit back? Whereas I know, I call him Jono sometimes. Yeah. I'm just like, I'm going to spar with you. I'm going to crack jokes, try and make you laugh as well. And
of course, the Australian on set calls him Jono.
Yeah,
Thank
correct.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
Exactly. So my first impressions, I didn't really know Jonathan too well, but the minute we became friends, I just started to understand what a helpful and supportive person. I could get so into how humble his beginnings are. I mean, at the time, he was working on Ballers as a location scout, body double for Russell Brand, and managing a rental property, the one he was living in 2 streets away from me, or a few blocks away from me, rather. He was just working so hard, and it was an inspiration to me. He was playing Jesus on our show and then taking calls as the building manager, going like, oh yeah, your rent is this, and I'll leave the keys for you here. He was doing that pretty consistently. There was just a moment where he goes, I can't actually physically juggle this, and he graciously passed the keys on to somebody else. But I learned so much from him. He was, not only were we really, really great friends, but he would give me advice, as an actor as well. So he's been a huge, huge inspiration for me. And this is all just from a friend perspective. Now, if I relay that to the Jonathan that other people see, which is Jesus on screen, then I'm not surprised as to why so many people resonate with that character. I think you see a lot of an actor in a character. And I think Jonathan's grace, his humility, how humble he is, same word, but still, just want to reiterate it, how open he is, how funny he is, how relatable he is, all of those things I found out pretty quickly, and I think the rest of the world has found out.
There's a show called Jonathan and Jesus that I'm going to tell everybody. This should be your homework to watch, because it's on Prime, and Jonathan goes into what it's been like playing Jesus, what it's been like taking on such an important the icon of the Christian faith, and it's fascinating. So Jonathan and Jesus, homework to go check that out for everybody.
Yeah.
But I want to talk to you about, the space of the years making this show. A lot's happened for you, professionally. You're developing as this incredible character of John, but you've also got married, you've had a baby. Congratulations on that. Very exciting. It's big life that's happening alongside the show. How do you think you've changed the most between when you look back at the sort of 20-something-year-old that joined this series now, a little bit older, a little bit more mature, a bit more life experience? What's the biggest thing you notice about how you've changed as a person?
I don't know. I mean, I think we would like to hear, we would like to hear, yeah, I've changed, for the better and whatnot. But I think it's just as good to say I've stayed the same person, maybe. I think that's true for a lot of the cast. I think that's why the show is so successful, is that maybe, there are small things like responsibility and, maybe there are aspects of our lives that have changed where it's like we used to walk around as the actors of the show and nobody knew who we were, and then now maybe a few more people know who we are. But it's crazy. Every single cast member is the exact same person that I remember coming into the show. And I can tell you, I hope, again, I'm not treading on heels, but I can tell you that there have been some massive offers for people who want to be on the show, on The Chosen, that the show has actually said, we respectfully decline that offer because, not to say that they wouldn't be amazing on the show, but the show has been really good at, the actors that came onto the show, it was their breakout kind of role. And I think the show has done such a good job of finding just an amazing group of people. And it's proven 8 years later where, if I'm having a conversation with any of the disciples or the followers or with Jonathan or whoever, everyone's the same kind of person.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are things like having a kid where, I'll tell you one thing that's changed is I used to be on set with Vanessa, and I remember her child now who's 6 or 5 when she was a baby, because that would have been in year 2 or year 3 of the show, and now we're in year 8. And I used to be like, oh, cute little kid. Now, this season, I spent a lot of time with Vanessa. Now I've got, little Leah, and I'm just asking her questions about just like, what about this? And, when did you start with the 2 languages? Because you've got Spanish and you've got English, and because her husband's from Spain and she's from Peru, they're teaching their child Korean, so they want the 3rd language. They're very smart.
Yeah.
Vanessa and her husband and the kids, all very, very bright. So I pick Vanessa's brain a lot. And it happened a lot.
No pressure for Leo to become like trilingual now.
I know, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm teaching him Greek. Obviously, we're teaching him English, and then Portuguese is a 3rd language in Christy's family. So he might be trilingual. But yeah, I'd like to believe as a cast we haven't changed as people, but maybe becoming a father, there's definitely things that have, with responsibilities and whatnot, there's been a lot of changes, but I think I'm pretty proud, and the cast is pretty proud to say we're the same people that we were. Maybe improvements, but personality wise we're the same.
I think that's a really lovely way to look at things, because sometimes consistency and those sorts of stable traits can be overlooked because we just think, oh, there's always got to be something bigger, better, different, the next thing. But absolutely, I think consistency is so important. And I think too with The Chosen, it isn't just a series. It is a kind of, it's a culture on set. There's a community there, and it probably is part of its success that it's not this massive celebrity-driven thing. It's actually really beautifully grounded, and there's sort of a heart in it, I suppose, that all of you guys carry.
It's not the right analogy to use maybe, but it works for me in this moment. It's kind of like when this is not a situation with us, but like employees have like stock in the company that they work for. Like obviously we're just so passionate about the show because we've been on it since second one. So we feel a sense of ownership on the show when we see it going from strength to strength. I'm sure people that come on now enjoy the growth from now until 2 years from now. But for that original cast and the ones that came in, even in season 3 and 4, I'm thinking of people like, Luke, who came on as Judas. Even when he came in, like, we were still half built at that stage. But, we all feel a sense of ownership. And so we have a stake. We have a very personal and emotional stake in the show. And, they say in business when you do have employees who are attached to the company with stock, they want to see the business do well because it benefits them. For us, we have an emotional stake in the show. And so it means that we're constantly wanting it to grow. We're so proud of it. And, in instances like when we have ChosenCon, which is coming up, as a shameless plug, all of us in the cast are just... I know personally, I'll be there till the last fan, because that's what I did in season 1 when there was 5 fans. It's just like, it's only 5 people. And then when it changed to 10, it's like, well, there's only 10 people. And now it's just like, well, there's 1,000, I want to try my best. Usually it's our security team that is dragging us away because they're like, you got to go to the next thing. It's like, but no, them. So we have an emotional stake in the show. And I think the show's done a great job of sticking together as a family, and family want to see family do well. And that's why, everything is like the perfect chemistry, I would say.
How do you think doing this job is going to affect what you do next? Because it seems like it isn't like any other TV gig or any other movie gig. How's it going to shape what you say yes to after this?
I definitely landed this job as an actor, and so I still hope for diverse roles and different roles and whatnot. So I'm still excited and intrigued by that. But at the same time, I would say now, maybe this is another difference, is that I didn't necessarily have a passion to see John to its conclusion. I also had no idea how long John lived, and now I'm so fascinated as I give small hints to our writers. Go as far as you want to go. But I recently went to Patmos in Greece, and I went to the cave of the Apocalypse, cave of Apocalypsis, which basically means Revelations, and saw where John wrote, or where he, as the Greek Orthodox say, where he dictated the book of Revelations to his scribe. And that makes me excited. I'm so game and ready and passionate, and just so ready to continue John's journey. So if my next job is to continue on the path of portraying John, because I know John goes for a very long time. I do see the adventures of John and Peter a little bit in Acts and whatnot. So I'm intrigued to see how that is interpreted. Maybe that's something that's changed. Before I didn't know whether I would be excited to do more things related to John. But I just think that the show is also such a separate kind of media project that I would like to do other stuff after the show, but I'm just as passionate to do, to stay on this journey.
I can see the comments after this interview now writing about what John's going to do and imagining Dallas trying to attempt some kind of representation of John dictating Revelation, as you say. That would be fascinating if that show could come off.
Well, we talked a little bit about it, although I can't talk about that particular thing that I was talking to you about off air, but it is that combination of legend, lore, scripture, and history, all of these things together. All of them bleed into one, but obviously some Christians exclusively look at the Bible. I know with Orthodoxy, there was actually a little quote from Father Gerasimo, and again, I don't want to misquote Orthodoxy here, but he said Bible first, not Bible only. In other words, there is so much history to Greek Orthodoxy, and they take pride in that. And that's something I learnt by spending time with the Patriarch, learning that actually the first, leader of the church in Byzantium in the East was Andrew. And when I said Andrew, I'm like, oh, was there like another Andrew? And they're like, no, the first called disciple Andrew, like one of the 12. Yeah. I'm like, oh, you mean Noah? I immediately thought of Noah. And then I started thinking about like, oh, that is fascinating to know that. I don't know what the exact number was, but Patriarch Bartholomew is like the 270th or 63rd or something like that successor to Andrew the disciple. And this has all been, recorded for 1,000 years plus. And so that aspect of it from an historical perspective is so intriguing, and that bookkeeping. And by the way, when I did go to Patmos, they let me into the library, which no one's allowed to go into. I was reading 1,000 to 1,400-year-old documents.
The perks of playing John. This is just not fair.
Yeah, I know, right? So I find that intertwining so intriguing. Again, not everybody needs to find it interesting, or not everybody needs to commit to it, but it'll be intriguing to see what, if any of that, could potentially be used for our show.
Well, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you, George. Thank you so much for stopping by.
No, my pleasure.
I couldn't not have you here, though, and ask, can you give us any hints about what's coming up in season 6?
Yeah, it's a good way to wrap up, because I wanted to give you guys some stuff about season 6. I don't know. It's so hard because it's all in the Bible. I don't think there's any surprises about what's happening. We're filming season 7 in a couple of months. We just finished season 6 in September. We filmed for about 6 months. We filmed in Italy. We filmed for 3 weeks in Italy, so that was all crucifixion stuff. There were times when Jonathan took 3 hours in makeup, 3 hours out of makeup, and the working day in the entertainment industry in Italy is 10 hours. Ooh. So if you think about 3 and 3 is 6, that's 4 hours of Jonathan in full. So makeup, what I mean is his whole body because of the lashes. He is completely, And so if he needs to get out of makeup and, all of us need to do our coverage as much, like sometimes Jonathan would be sprinting over after his hair and makeup, or he'd be like sprinting over in the robe just out of makeup, and he would want to be in position to be there for us, but it didn't always happen. So sometimes we're there performing to a tennis ball.
Oh, gosh.
Or an empty cross. Yeah. But one that actually really helped was performing to an empty cross.
Oh, wow.
Especially after seeing him there. Again, the context of the scene is we need to be seeing Jonathan or Jesus on the cross, but nobody knows what the actor is thinking. So my performance, actually, in that moment, I used it. I just went, oh my goodness, he's gone. But the words I'm saying or what I'm reacting to is probably Jesus on the cross. But in the edit, all you're going to see is me having a reaction. And if they like it in the edit, they might put it in. But sometimes my reactions are, it's an empty cross, he's gone already. So I might fast track my emotional response to, oh no, come back. There was a lot of that with Jonathan. One thing that it's a little bit personal, but I'll divulge and disclose, is he would come over and he would need our physical touch to help him get into what he needed to get into. But when that happened, I would just grab his arm and I would say, don't go. And that triggered him. But it also triggered me. And it was that was, it sounds perverse, but that was my favorite thing, because when you're an actor, you want to feel the real emotion. That's what I mean by it was my favorite. And so when I kept feeling it every time and he kept feeling it every time, as an actor, you chase that, because you hope that that's real. You know it's real when you feel it in your heart, and then the scene starts and you're still feeling that. So that, for me, maybe I shouldn't use the word favorite. Maybe I should use the word it was the most potent or the most memorable. Maybe that's the best way to put it. But it was beautiful. I loved that. There's another thing of, there's not much I can disclose, but there's another thing of John finding his way to the cross. There were days where the disciples were all together, and there were few and far between. And all of us, by the way, I think Dallas thoroughly knew when all the disciples were on set together, because we said, hey, we only got 1 or 2 days together. Spoiler alert. So and he gave us so much grace. I mean, I think even he afforded himself to be a bit silly.
Yeah.
He had just gotten himself a little laser pointer. And he's like,
Were
George,
you guys the cats? Like, he's kind of throwing it around, making you chase?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, who's the one acting up, us or Dallas? Because he's like, hey, George, and he would point he'd stand right next to me, and he'd just look at the floor. My feet would be literally an inch away from his laser pointer, but he would make the effort. He's like, I need you on that spot, if that's possible. But he just wanted to use his laser pointer.
Oh, he just wanted to be a rat bag.
Yeah, and he wanted to use his laser pointer. And I'm just like, so just where the laser pointer is? He's like, yes. And I'm like, isn't that convenient that you have the laser pointer? He's like, yes, it is. He goes, that's why I've got it. And I'm like, so should I stand on that green spot? He's like, yes, please. And I stood on it. He's like, thank you, sir.
Yeah,
good
job.
Thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome, sire. So we were all very silly in those moments. And but there was few and far between that we could afford to do that, which is why we took every chance we could. Only a few moments of John getting to hang out with the gang. Mostly he's with the women. But also when you combine those two journeys, I think the show does a really interesting job of explaining why everything is so far apart. I get asked the question, or I get told, like, John was the only one there. And it's often said with how good is John because of that? And if this is a spoiler, I hope not, but I think the writers will respect, what my answer is, but that's not how it's portrayed. I think it's more of a surrender. Obviously, Jesus has the ultimate surrender with the crucifixion, and how I saw it was that there's a surrender from John, and before he knows it, he finds himself there.
I'm not sure how I'm going to react to seeing the first episodes of this next season, which does come out a little later this year. But thank you so much for listening to this episode of Undistracted. Would love for you to rate, review it, share it with a friend. You can let me know what you think. Find me on Instagram at laura.bennett_ or email undistracted@hope1032.com.au. And until next time, enjoy living this undistracted life.